Hello and welcome to this video from the Trent Valley Railway. In this video we'll take a detailed look at track laying on the inclines and the transition to the scenic section. This video is part of a series of videos that documents the build of the layout. This is part 1, where we'll look at the track laying technique that I've used to put track down on the inclines here, and also the transition between the inclines and the scenic section. The tools that I've used throughout this video are quite simply having the track, some track pins, some rail joiners, and these are for me code 75 because the track is code 75. Then I have a hammer, a track setter tool to make sure that the track is straight up the inclines, and then finally a very small drill piece just to drill a pilot hole through the sleeper in the track, so it makes it easier when I'm tapping the track pins down onto the cork underlay. So let's now take a look back at the work starting off at the bottom of the incline. The track work is now in progress, so this is the area that I was working on in the last update, and I've now started to bring the track around this corner, and then it joins the incline, and I've got one section of concrete track in there. At the moment the radius is around about a third radius curve around the corner, and then I've got the track setter there for a straight to go all the way up the incline. I've done the inner track on the corner first, and I've used a old Hornby R609 third radius double curve to effectively measure out the curvature and the radius around, so that it provides a minimum third radius curve on the inside, and then I've then spaced out with the Pendolino carriages, gauging enough room between the tracks for the other line that will go around the curve. And it follows onto what is, for the time being, a temporary line on the scenery section. So this comes onto the scenery section here, and I've just got the two tracks then going down to the other end of the layout, where they then join up down here with the other incline. I've now got several concrete points, both left hand and right hand points, to start working up the track plan for the scenery section. I've added first of all a point off the main line. This then feeds into another point but in the reverse direction, which will go to a shunt neck siding for locos. There's then a bit of space before another 2 points, which then feed the 3 sidings for the container depot. These then go all the way to the very back of the garage, and over the past month I've been checking to see if I've got enough space for the length of container trains that I want to run, and also if there's just enough space at the very back for a loco to detach itself from the train, and it then gets locked in until another loco comes on the front of the container train ready to go back down the incline, and that will come off the shunt neck siding. So once that new train then departs, whether it's loaded or unloaded, it will then release the loco at the very back of those sidings. So those are the plans in very short detail for the track work going into the container depot. I've also spent a bit of time deciding which end I was going to have the container depot. I looked at some alternative junction locations at this end, but decided not to go with this. You'll see here in a quick picture that shows what that junction would have looked like. And although the curve and the sort of incline comes much closer to the back wall at this end, how it would have operated coming up and down the inclines, and also the space that it left for the scenery section, wasn't as good as what I've got currently laid out on the scenery section. So in the current proposal here, I will have those containers all lined up at this end at the very back, and then it also has the space at the very end of those sidings to detach the loco and leave it locked in at the very back before it can go back to the shunt neck siding. When I was looking at the track plan for the scenery section here, I couldn't quite fit in a crossover without compromising on the length of the sidings or the scenery section behind here. There's also then a curve as it comes around from here onto the incline and lift out section. So what I've had to do is look at putting in the crossover on the lift out section. So these 2 points here are wired up and ready to be put in on this section of the layout. So I've started here by taking out the track work from the centre to the right hand edge to put in that point and to line it up with the track coming off the lift out section. I then now need to do the same for the other point, but take out the existing track on the other side. I've now got these 2 points in with the left hand point to form the crossover coming out of the container depot to go down the incline to the fiddle yard. I've taken up the track on the other line and I've put the wires through the lift out section. I'm now ready to put in the concrete sleeper in these gaps here, and as you'll see, these points move freely on the right hand side of the lift out and also on the left. So they're ready for the point motors also to be put in underneath. I'll now continue to put in the extra track pieces and wire those up as well. So I've now cut down the track and first of all got the small piece in on the left hand side, tidied up the wires as well, and then got them nicely lined up with the incline track that goes down the incline in that direction. And then as we come across, I've done again the other piece of concrete track to the right hand side here and pinned this down and also lined it back up with the incline that goes and carries on towards the scenery section. I've been spending a lot of time working on preparing the track for the scenery section. At the very front is the standard Pico piece of track, and that's the same as those that are just laid out to show the container sidings for this scenery section. And over the last month I've been working to cut the webbing on the back of these track lengths from Pico with the concrete sleepers on them, so that each concrete sleeper is separate for the scenery section track. This will then help to get the spacing between the sleepers to be much more realistic. So these four here I've just spaced out at 9mm centres. It roughly gives you around about 5 to 6mm spacing between each of the concrete sleepers, and when that is done for the whole length of this scenery section, I'm hoping it looks a lot more aesthetically pleasing than the standard Pico track concrete sleeper spacing that they provide you with straight out of the box. You'll also notice here then that I've also got the DCC bus wiring attached to the bottom of the sleepers. I'll move those if they don't align where I need them, but I've done this set of tracks for one direction, and I've also got the other direction as well. The last main bit of the track work on the scenery section on the main running lines is then a concrete sleeper point that I've also wired up, and again I've very neatly gone in and wired up the wiring underneath the webbing of the concrete sleeper point so that that will sit flush on top of the cork underlay when I also come to lay that on the scenery section. So I hopefully will plan to do all of the track laying when it gets a little bit warmer, so it's in the middle temperature between not too cold and then not too hot here in the garage, so that when I do leave the gaps between each of these sections of track, when it expands or decontracts, I won't get any problems with the rail joins. I've allowed these two strips of cork underlay to dry overnight, and those are now firmly attached to the baseboard. So I'll now start with getting the track down on the nearest cork section there. In this track piece I'm going to use a small section just to keep the track rigid as it comes off the lift out, so the sleepers are all still joined together with the webbing on the back, and then after that, as it comes around and onto the scenery section, I'll then start spacing out those sleepers as required and pop the two wires through the baseboard. I've got the first track piece now down on top of the cork underlay here. I've had to wait quite a while for the glue to set and go off underneath this track piece here, and there's a small bit that I've added back in to reposition just one sleeper, but otherwise I'm very happy with the spacing and the look. So I've then, in the background, you'll note, continued, spread down the Copydex glue, let it set off for about 15 minutes before it goes tacky, and then put these concrete sleepers in on top of it. I've added a bit more extra glue in the areas where it comes off being pinned down before the lift out section piece there. And then you'll see I've weighed it down with the dumbbell weights, because I haven't got too many of these, but particularly as well as it's on a curve, I've had to wait to do the second piece after doing the first piece. So I'm now moving onwards, got this second piece in, and I've just drilled the hole for the point motor pin and also the holes for the wires for that point up there to now go in there, and then weigh it down with this other spare weight as well. I've now got this point coming off the curve in place, and it's also got the point motor in there as well, which we'll come back to in a minute. However, since doing the section of track between there and the lift out section, I came across a bit of a problem with the gauging between these two rails for when I have two pendolinos running on both tracks. And so in the previous part of the video, the tracks were actually not far enough apart, so I've had to move this track, which is closer to the camera here, and also reposition the connection as well to the lift out section. So this whole track through here on the nearer curve has been realigned to be moved away from that other curve, and comes up now alongside with the correct gauging, so that I don't get the two pendolinos hitting each other as they go around the corner here. I've now got the two running lines coming off the incline and joining the scenery section. There'll be a few pictures as I talk through this, just to show you the gluing down of the cork and the track. But as it comes off this area here, I've kept the sleeper spacing as per it comes as a flexi track for Pico, and then as it joins up onto the scenery board here, the spacing has then been increased, so as it comes around the corner there, it will join up eventually with the main running lines. Whilst gluing this down, I've also then added in some small pieces of card to the one side of the sleepers to give a bit of a banking effect as it comes around that corner, and eventually in this area here there'll be a scenery partition between the running lines going left and obviously those that come then down onto the incline. So I'll come back at a later date and join up these lines here. Thank you for watching part 1 of this track laying video. Here's just a few final shots of the Class 66, testing out the track work that I've put down in the transition between the incline and the scenic section. Coming soon will be part 2, where it will detail the work on the scenic section for the main running lines and also track laying in the container depot. Cheers.